This whole thing is so disturbing. So Matt Murphy, I mean, you're a career prosecutor and, spent your life. Every time I turn on Dateline, it's another case out of Orange County, California, that Matt Murphy prosecuted. It's amazing. I'm like, I know him. Anyway, you tell me why you think they indicted or issued an arrest warrant for Timothy Busfield here.
Well, I think one of the reasons they did this, Megyn, is this isn't his first brush with accusations like this. He's been accused twice before, I think, by actresses or female actors that accuse him of impropriety. But when you get into the details of those, I think the defense, if it was even admissible, could characterize it as basically awkward passes. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't particularly violent. He wasn't using weapons or anything like that. It was more like he was drunk and gropey. The interesting thing, and I think Mark will find this interesting. I actually did research on this, which is always a little scary. In California, Megyn, we have evidence code section known as 1108, which stands for the idea that propensity evidence or other sex crimes are generally admissible, and there's almost a presumption that it comes in. New Mexico does not have that. In fact, New Mexico rejected that. So this is actually a tough one. Based on what we've seen, he said some things in his interview that were kind of weird, like maybe I tickled him, but he's very sort of circumspect on that.
I was very playful with these young boys. He said, I admits to being playful with them on the set.
Yeah.
And he also says, Matt, let me tell you what I read, like what jumped out at me was he said he could not remember. He said, he denies, I think, the sexual assault, but he says he can't remember. And yet you've got these young boys saying, I remember. The boys, they were 7 at the time, they're 11 now, are saying, forgive me, members of the audience, but that will be explicit because it's a sex crime. He touched my penis and my rear end, my butt, over clothing on the set right after scenes were done when nobody was there. Like the set would clear off and he'd go in there. And I guess there was at least a couple of times where the main boy, it appears they're twin brothers, would still be in the bed. And he'd come over and start tickling him, and then it would progress to, abuse, to feeling this boy. And there's a whole allegation about the fact that they're supposed to have people watching the boys all the time on the set, and that this woman was not there, and that the police were able to verify that she was not there a lot. But I mean, if I came to you and said, have you ever fondled a boy, in any capacity, you certainly wouldn't say, I don't remember. It would be a hard, absolutely not. And so that to me sounded like the most damning exchange in here. I'll find the exact one and tell you what it is. Keep going.
No, I think you're right. That's the tough part. So when my first day in sexual assault, I did 4 years in sex before I went to homicide. And my boss, Chuck Middleton, called me in and he said, we don't file one-on-ones. So in other words, every sex case, you have to have some sort of corroboration. And it's almost formulaic, and Mark has dealt with a million of these too. You do covert calls where the victim calls the offender. You get something good in an interview, or you have some other form of corroboration. Sometimes this is, again, graphic. Sometimes it's an STD that the poor little kid gets. Sometimes it's in the form of other victims. California has significantly easier evidence laws for prosecutors than I think New Mexico does. So this is going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't know what's up with him kind of being in the wind right now, because I think this, based on what I've read, this is and I think Mark will agree, this sounds like a defensible case. And one of the things you encounter all the time, Megyn, when you actually work these is you get, first of all, any sex unit, it's 90% sexual abuse of children. And you get case after case where you believe the kid, you're certain that the kids are telling the truth, but you just don't have that corroboration to go after them. So these are tough. It psychologically takes a toll on prosecutors.
Here's the excerpt. So Warner Brothers had an outside investigator come in through another law firm and do an investigation. By the way, Warner Brothers does not look good in this whole thing. at all. The police officer alleges that they delayed for months, giving him information and giving him access to witnesses, all while there were still children on the Warner Brothers sets. And there was a real question about whether they were adequately protecting them. It's disturbing. Warner Brothers denies that and says that they protect all children. But this is what the cop alleges, that Timothy and he had a conversation, and he said, I did ask Timothy if he ever had any physical contact with these boys and if he ever picked them up and tickled them. Timothy said it was highly likely that he would have. Timothy said it was a playful environment like he wanted. However, Timothy said the dad would make these boys hug him and he didn't really want them to. Timothy then stated, quote, I don't remember those boys. No, I don't. I don't actually. I don't remember if it happened. I don't remember overtly tickling the boys ever, but it wouldn't be uncommon for me. Now, maybe he's saying, I don't remember if I ever tickled them. And maybe there was an explicit denial saying, but I never molested them. One can assume he denied that. But then he says, Mark, I don't remember the boys at all. I don't remember the boys. No, I don't. I don't actually. How does he not remember the boys who starred in this show from at least age 7 to, I think, 2 years later? 2 years they starred in this show, and they said this alleged abuse happened over the course of possibly 5 to 6 times.
As Matt will tell you, nothing makes a prosecutor happier than a accused deciding he's going to engage with an investigator and start talking. This is just prime example, Exhibit A, B, C, as to why you should never engage with an investigator, because first of all, you think you're going to talk your way out of it, and you're reading from the report, and I'm sure that's probably somewhat accurate as to what he said, and it's susceptible to many interpretations. And if an investigator's got his kind of agenda, he's going to interpret it in a way that's most kind of incriminatory. I will tell you the two things that bother me about this case, if true, and I don't know because I'm not involved, but I've read that at least the first person they went to, or that the mother or their guardian went to, was a lawyer, and that it was lawyer referred. I'm sitting here in the civil courthouse. I'll tell you, one of the first questions that anybody gets asked in front of a jury is, who referred you to your medical provider? And if you say my lawyer did, you should see the juror's curtain come down in terms of the credibility. That's number one. Number two, I found it interesting about the way that you said Warner Brothers comes off on this, because they did hire an outside investigator. My experience with these outside investigations is they almost always find culpability. They especially on the individual, and they go to the extent of exonerating the corporation. So I'm fascinated by the fact that the outside investigation exonerated him. And if it's true,
it did not. No, he was not exonerated.
Yeah, and if
that's too strong a word.
Well, they obviously didn't take action against him that I'm aware of, and they did not. I don't know, and it would be interesting to know if they found something and it was inconclusive. Did they refer it to the authorities? Did they think that they had an obligation?
It doesn't sound like they did.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it.
It sounds like what happened was the boys, the one boy who allegedly was like the main target, came out and told his therapist that it had graduated beyond the point that he was willing to admit earlier. Now he's 11 and he, came clean with it. And that's when the police got involved more seriously.
But
I'll read you the Warner Brothers.
Yeah, that's interesting. That it's a therapist who presumably is a mandatory reporter. If the therapist was consulted for some other reason, that tends to be consistent with a whether it's a fresh complaint, however you want to characterize it or analyze it. But if it turns out that the lawyer referred to the therapist who promptly then reported it, that becomes problematic.
The therapist, the way I read the complaint is that they consulted a law firm when they got wind of these alleged misbehaviors. And Then the law firm referred the kid to a therapist, and they admitted that he'd been tickling them on their legs and their stomachs. That's what the boys said first, at least the one boy, but I think both. And then the cops said, well, we can't really do anything with that. I mean, all of us sitting here know how creepy and disgusting that is. No man would tickle another man's little boy on the legs and the stomach playfully. That is not a thing unless you're a groomer. But okay, let's just give him the benefit of the doubt because he's being accused of child molestation, so we don't want to get over our skis. So then the kids, at least the one main boy, continued seeing the therapist from age 8, I think, was when they first came forward, to now 11. So for 2 or 3 years. And finally told the therapist that he actually had been touched on his private parts by this guy, Busfield. That was his allegation. And that's when they called the police again and said, you have to do something about this. And it was the police. They did call the police to say, this is wrong. I did pull up the part about Warner Brothers. Here's what the police affidavit says. Warner Brothers made it very difficult to obtain information for this case and waited almost 3 months to comply with a court order to produce the independent investigation. Now, that is just wrong. I mean, I'm sorry, but like Hollywood is already under suspicion for running effectively a pedophile ring, given the number of issues we've seen coming out of there. And you can go back to Roman Polanski. You can certainly go to what's happened at Nickelodeon. Corey Feldman, child actor, has been jumping up and down about this. And now you have Warner Brothers that gets an accusation, and they have a court order saying, fork over the independent investigation. They wait 3 months to comply. I mean, like, there are children on their sets right now. That's why the police are upset. Warner Brothers used attorney Richard Westling to advise me that I would need to go through his law firm to talk with any employees of Warner Brothers when I was trying to ensure the safety of additional child actors. When talking with employees of Warner Brothers, they were very afraid of retaliation from Warner Brothers if they talked to me. And again, Warner Brothers responds by saying the health and safety of our cast and crew is always our top priority, especially minors. We take all allegations of misconduct very seriously and have systems in place to promptly investigate. That's terrible. Warner Brothers, you need to do better. A new year means new financial goals, like making sure your savings are secure and diversified. Will this be the year you decide to talk to someone from Birch Gold Group? They use an educational approach with a deep understanding of macroeconomics. There are forces pushing the dollar lower and gold higher, which is why they believe every American should own physical gold. So until January 30th, if you're a first-time gold buyer, Birch Gold is offering a rebate of up to $10,000 on qualifying purchases. To claim eligibility and start the process, you just text MK to the number 989898. Birch Gold can help you roll an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and you are still eligible for a rebate of up to $10,000. Consider making right now your first time to buy gold and take advantage of a rebate up to $10,000 when you buy before January 30th. Text MK to the number 989898. Claim your eligibility today. Again, text MK to 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.